Let's take a look at some information and charts on 1inch for Brave New Coin. So 1inch is a multi-chain DEX in a crowded group of other multi-chain DEXs, including the single chain DEX Uniswap. And for the most part, all of these DEXs look identical, which is good. They're all interoperable, easy to connect to. Some of them have limit orders now, some of them don't. But for the most part, you're going to see an increasing amount of centralized exchange features on DEXs like limit orders. And 1inch tells you here what you're saving between using them versus competitors, which is good. You need a reason to use this stuff over a competitor anyway. And this just tells you right here, depending on fees, depending on order book depth, depending on aggregation stuff, right? All this is going to change depending on those factors. But 1inch and Matcha are basically, to me, probably direct competitors, whereas Uni, Sushi, and everybody else is kind of in their own pile. Balancer's in its own pile. It's a bit of an oddity. Curve as well, a bit of an oddity. Not really a DEX, but kind of a DEX, right? So for the most part, 1inch is competing with ZRX protocol Matcha directly. They have a governance aspect that I've never really paid too much attention to. I just know it's there. I think that's most people. Most people could care less about governance. Most people focus on the pools and the farming over the governance. And we can sort this by liquidity. It's all the usual stuff. Their token with ETH, LDO, VSP, Opium, WXT, ARC. These are not usual suspects. These are definitely Ichi. These are kind of 1inch centric for farming, based on the APYs, based on the pools currently available. Previously, they did have pools that I participated in personally, 1inch ETH, 1inch BTC, or BTC ETH, right? All this stuff has variable and permanent loss that you need to pay attention to, but they've ended those programs. They may bring them back at some point in time. But currently, the only three available are Opium, VSP, and Ichi connected to 1inch. They did announce a kind of gas rebate for gas refunds when you're staking with 1inch, which is good because you need incentives for people to stake here, because right now those incentives are not strong enough or too small relative to competition. So they either need to increase incentives or bring back more pools for people to come back, because as it sits now, liquidity is low, volume's low, everything's at basically all-time lows, right? Nobody is really using 1inch like they did previously because the incentives just aren't there. TVL down significantly, trading volume ranging actually kind of up since lows, and transactions ranging, users kind of flat and ranging. None of these things are particularly bullish. And we can also look at the other chains here on the bank. So this is BSC 1inch. Again, transaction or volumes flat, transactions rising slightly, users flat. And then on Polygon as well, volumes flat, transactions actually rising, users actually rising. I don't know if this Polygon spike is from those hacked funds or not. Very well could be. But if a chain or a DEX is multi-chain compatible, right, there's always this increased attack surface risk. And when you're analyzing this stuff, you always have to look at other chains, if they're relevant, if the information's available. This stuff's going to get more and more complex over time. And even DeFi Llama has TVL at 47 million, which is, in the grand scheme of things, basically zero relative to competition. If we look at the 1inch LP, 1inch limit orders, and 1inch slice, they actually have a pretty decent slice of swap volume relative to everybody else. It's Uni, Sushi, and 1inch on any given day. And then 0x and everybody else, Bancor, Curve, Paraswap, Matcha, everybody else is down here, DYDX. So they're actually positioned well based on volume, but positioned very poorly based on pool incentives. So as a pure DEX, they actually do well, but as an AMM, they are not competitive whatsoever. We can also look at volume per day. I don't know why 1inch isn't on here other than the LP and limit orders, but maybe it's under Uniswap. No, Uniswap was what it was before 1inch. Is it on the monthly? It's not on the monthly either, I don't think. So I guess they need to, honestly, they could probably just get rid of the 1inch LP and 1inch limit orders for now. unless I'm blind, but I don't see it here. So this 1 inch should actually show up pretty decently on this monthly chart, but it's basically the Uniswap show for the most part. And if we compare 1 inch to Matcha or ZRX, ZRX is a pretty decent slice. So 1 inch probably sits between the sushi and the ZRX slices. If you look at transaction counts, down significantly, much like everything else. Average transaction values spiking hard. Not really sure why. Bit unusual. This could be part of those the incentives unlocking for the gas refunds. Usually when you see spikes like this, it's somebody, the people who created the coin are moving a bunch of coins around. That's my guess. NVT is down significantly, but it's falsely down because of this big spike in coins being moved. So not really anything to pay attention to there. And active addresses just continue to go down, 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 down. So that's not what you want to see. As they increase pooling, farming, or incentives, this graph should start to perk up. If they don't do that, they're just going to continue to hemorrhage active addresses over time. And if we look at MVRV versus price in the line here, no real signal just yet. I mean, this is a very, very new coin, and MVRV has just continued to decline over time, currently sitting at 2.2. So for any other token, a MVRV of 2 or a 2x multiple is basically the top. So either this will defy all of those rules, or this thing will continue to shed value in price over time. If we look at 1 inch, the search term, not completely the DEX, as there's some like baseline search interest here, but this very clearly is probably the DEX, and that's declining as well. So not a lot of bullishness on the fundamental side of things, other than the ability to go multi-chain and swap volume basically third relative to all DEXs on ETH. Flipping to technicals, we have the 15 to 200 EMAs here, VPVR, monthly pivots, volume, and RSI. And 1 inch had been holding this range, broke the range, then established a falling wedge, broke up from the falling wedge, which acted as a reversal as it should. And now it's back on its way to grinding through previous support turned resistance. Hopefully will turn its support. Ideally, you get something like what I'm drawing here, where you get a breakthrough of this resistance, breakthrough of the 200, and then a retracement back to the 200, back to the range low, the previous range low anyway, and then blast off. Throughout all of this, you may see a bearish divergence growing as well, with any higher highs in price, lower highs in RSI. That will typically precede a pullback. So you're going to see that bear div probably around here. This is extremely loose, but this is one option if this stuff continues to take off. Another option is it just ranges perpetually between 5 and 6 until something happens, right? Kind of like what it did previously. It didn't really go anywhere. It didn't outperform anybody. Made a higher high and then just immediately puked down to lows. If we look at the cloud on the daily, it really likes this 480 level, which is a 50% retracement of the high to the low. It's well on its way to that edge-to-edge move to the flat Kumo there. On the 12-hour, it's already broken out of the 12-hour. No bullish cloud yet. You do have a bullish TK across, and the lagging span's not yet above price, but it looks longable enough at this point in time for continuation to 480 based on that flat Kumo. 1 inch BTC has never done super well since listing, since February. Just pretty much been sideways down. There is a growing bull div here on these lows. So it's conceivable that this is some sort of triple bottom that attempts a mean reversion. So if you're a risk-hungry person, you are already in this expecting a mean reversion plus basically to kind of the 10K sat level. But in general, over time, this has not been bullish, and the 1 inch ETH chart looks bearish enough to buy, much like a lot of the ETH charts. ETH has outperformed lots of stuff in DeFi recently, and you're going to see bullish divergences on virtually every alt ETH pair, which gives the potential for bullish reversal, mean reversion, in this case to the 200 period moving average on the 12-hour 0012, whatever that is. Decent move up. But again, just like against BTC, this has really never held any high over an extended period of time. Lastly, I'll just mention the ETH-BTC fund and DeFi portfolio, I trade for Techemy Capital on Enzyme.finance, non-custodial portfolio management tool where you can send ETH or USDC, or just watch what I'm doing. AUM performance, allocation, trades, all the yield plays I make, everything is all listed here at the bottom. Deposits, withdrawals. You can see that I'm in 1 inch. It's actually the biggest allocation right now because it's done so well over the past couple days at 12.6%. And I also have the ability to yield a bunch of stuff or provide yield to a bunch of stuff here. I don't know why SNX is at 53% on YVault, but I transferred that over today. 1 inch at 11% on the YVault as well. And what I've noticed is these APYs really do feed price. So people see the APYs at these crazy levels and they buy SNX to put into this yield generating protocol, right? And that pushes price higher. So just like SNX, you know, I expect 1 inch to move up just based on that alone, especially when it's higher than USDC APYs currently. So anyway, that's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.